Now, it's getting towards the end of November, so inevitably on Sunday Gardening, at this time of year, our thoughts turn to late May and the RHS Chelsea Flower Show. But there is a good reason. We're not just longing for warm, long gardening spring days, although I think it's fair to say, Bill, we are longing for warm, long gardening spring days. But the RHS has just released their exhibitor list for the 2017 Chelsea Flower Show, and over the next few weeks, we'll be meeting Kent's exhibitors. Some of them old friends of this show, and others completely new to Chelsea, like our first guest this morning, the designer Fiona Cadwallader from Fordwich near Canterbury. Morning, Fiona.
Good morning.
Am I right in saying it's your first time at Chelsea as an exhibitor?
You are absolutely right.
Then
yes.
what made you want to do it?
Well, I know it is, but I'm in equal measure daunted and excited by this. I think I've been going to Chelsea for so long as a visitor, and you start to have ideas. And I've always loved the show gardens, and I think I began to have the germ of an idea of how I might approach doing a garden myself.
Are you nervous? Are you trepidatious?
I am.
Are you excited? Or everything in equal measure?
All these things actually, but I'm incredibly lucky with the team of people that I already seem to have helping me through this process, so that helps a very great deal.
So when did you hear that the RHS had accepted your design?
About a month ago.
And you've had to keep quiet about it.
That's right.
Until last Friday.
Yes, that's exactly right, yes. So that was quite difficult because the build-up is very slow anyway, in terms of, you submit at the end of July. So that's a lot of people who might be wondering, what on earth are you doing with yourself?
Now, we've posted up a couple of images on our Sunday Gardening Facebook page of what it is you're looking to create. And this is based on the garden that you're looking to create is based on a Coleridge poem.
That's right, yes. I've always loved gardening poems, and this one in particular, I think, lends itself wonderfully to because it's based on a real garden. Some gardening poems are more the gardener's an idea in the poet's head, but this one, he actually had a garden, and he was actually laid up in his garden unwell when he composed the poem. So it has that immediacy and real plants and colours and a real sort of sense of being in the natural world.
Yes, he was laid up in this lime tree bower.
That's right.
And all his friends cleared off to the Cotswolds, I seem to recall.
Well, they all gone for a long nature run. He'd invited them, for intending to be part of this. And then his poor wife, Sarah, spilled a pan of boiling milk on his foot. And so he was completely immobile. So it's rather, it was rather a sad tale in a way. I wouldn't like to have been present at the conversation those two had when after the accident.
How are you going to interpret that in this garden, Fiona?
Well, I'm going to only allude to it in some ways in the same way that he does in the poem. He doesn't mention the pan of boiling milk, what's really happened to him. So I've built building a chaise longue in the centre of the garden, which you sort of recline on with your foot up, or both your feet up, I suppose. So that's the reference. I'm not actually going to have a pan of milk there.
And you're in the artisan category.
Yes.
And often that is the category of the rural idyll.
Yes.
Will the overall theme of the garden evoke that?
Well, I think to some extent it will. I think the artisan category also references use of materials, traditional materials, and also sort of the craft of the use of materials. And I think in some ways my garden perhaps reflects that more because I've got dry stone walling, and I've also got some very contemporary stainless steel elements, which require stainless steel is a very difficult material to work, and so there's that. But the garden opens up at the back into a miniature orchard. I mean, a really miniature orchard, which was the situation that Coleridge himself had. He had a village garden, but it adjoined an orchard which linked with a friend's much bigger garden. So to that extent, it's more like that perhaps than a garden right out in the country.
Fiona Cadwallader, the designer from Fordwich near Canterbury, is still with us. It's going to be a very exciting and scary 6 months, Fiona, I think it's fair to say.
It certainly is, yes.
Between now and May 2017. Fiona is going to be a first-time exhibitor at the RHS 2017 Chelsea Flower Show in May with the Poetry Lover's Garden, based on the poem This Lime Tree Bower My Prison by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Bill, I don't think you've ever exhibited at Chelsea. No. But you've visited many times. What does Fiona let herself in for, in your view?
I'm always interested in the backstory to it, how you actually get to arrive at a place like Chelsea. I know the amount of work that needs to be done from my time at Bressingham, but there's a tremendous amount goes on. Can I ask you, Fiona, a very prosaic question?
Yeah.
One of the real... There's some suspicion in that voice. One of the real joys of living in Kent when I was here was going out on garden safaris, and one of the absolute best is from the village of Fordwich. Were you part of that garden safari team?
Do you mean open gardens?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, oh yes, absolutely.
I just wanted to know if I walked round your garden.
Yes, well I hope so. Yes, we've been here 17 years,
yes.
And I've opened my garden every year, both for the village and for the NGS. So I hope you have been.
Was that an inspiration for you to go on and look to go into other shows, and that would lead to Chelsea?
Well, I didn't. I do visit other shows, but I didn't actually apply to anywhere except Chelsea, which was perhaps a bit rash, because I thought the garden that I designed was more appropriate to that setting.
So you've not tried this out anywhere else at all?
No, I'm mad, aren't I? But I didn't know that until after I'd done it.
Being self-aware is always the first step to the cure, Fiona, quite frankly. So very often when we speak to designers from the county, they often rely on local suppliers as well, particularly on the plant front. Have you got that far yet in terms of sourcing plants for the garden?
Yes, I have, and initially I thought that I would use all of the local nurseries and so on that I've used before. But I think growing for Chelsea is quite a specialist thing, and not just in terms of the sort of technique, but the growers have to be able to dispose of the plants that they haven't, that don't get used, because you need a lot of spares afterwards.
Yes.
So the advice I was given was much like all the other advice about Chelsea, which is that go to the people who've done it before, who have experience.
Yes, I think that's very wise, Bill, don't you? Particularly with growing that volume of plants that you need as well.
Yeah. I think so. And of course it's so different because everything has to be ready that week. It's not like when you're designing a garden for a client, a normal client, where you're, the garden is going to evolve over, months and years. This all has to be, it's a piece of theatre. It's all got to be ready on the day, and that's it.
So briefly, Fiona, we're as always broadcasting from Chelsea, fingers crossed, next year. So we look forward to seeing the finished article when we join you at the showground, which will be the day before Press and VIP Day, and also on Medals Day with some luck too. Just briefly talk us through the timeline from now through to May. Okay,
so at the moment I'm sourcing plants and preparing the numbers of plants. I'm visiting different kinds of contractors. I'm going down to Dorset next week to look at stone. Going to see the metal workers as well near Chichester, and going to different nurseries and looking at trees and also herbaceous planting and shrubs and everything else. So there's a lot of rushing around because up until Christmas while you work out who's growing what, and then in the new year I think elements start to get built and refined. So, but I haven't got there yet, so I don't really know what happens in January and February.
All right. Well, listen, we will catch up with you in a couple of months' time, Fiona. It'd be lovely to follow progress through to your first ever Chelsea Flower Show. Thank you for being with us this morning. It's Fiona Cadwallader, the designer from Fordwich near Canterbury, and it's the Poetry Lovers Garden in the Artisan category. So look forward to seeing how Fiona gets on build next year.
So do I.
You can have a look, by the way, on the BBC Radio Kent Sunday Gardening Facebook page. There's a small model of what Fiona is going to create, and also her scale drawing as well of the finished garden. You can see that on the Sunday Gardening Facebook page right now. Donna's in Maidstone.